All right. So today we're going to switch gears. Last two classes we've talked about buyer consultations and representations. Today we're going to switch into listings and kind of focus in on what does that look like. And I think pretty relevant and timely, right, to have this conversation, being that houses are sitting on the market a minute. I showed 13 houses over the weekend, which is probably the most houses I've shown in a long time that were actually available, right? And then of course going back and showing the top three choices, and then walking them through that process. And I was having a little heart palpitation because they were taking their time to make a decision, but it's like, okay, well, there's no other offers, no other interest, right? And it was really interesting too, is how quickly the listing agents were on me for feedback, and is your client interested, and almost kind of like a bit of desperation, if you will. So kind of an interesting space to be in. So and then advising the client, like, what should we offer, right? Where are they priced at? What should we offer? So, good day, right? We're at a $700,000 offer before 9 o'clock. So, fingers crossed we can get it accepted. So, that being said, let's jump in. Let's talk about some listing stuff today. Let me do a PowerPoint. So today we're going to talk about what was the headline for today? Next week is the 5 stages. Today is about the conversation. And so when we think about, we see this a lot with new agents, right? New agents gravitate away from doing listings because they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel like they, have the skill or the marketing. Wait, did somebody just jump in? Okay, there's Jessica. Okay, they don't have the presentation, the dollar amounts to market the home, and then they gravitate towards rentals, which actually have the most highest probability of lawsuits, right, as rentals, and we make the least amount of money. And then they get into the buy sides. And so I'd like to just kind of jump past that, right? Because any one of us can sit down and have a meaningful conversation with someone about selling their home, right? So any one of us can do that without having a big flashy presentation. Now, the presentation's nice, right? It helps. It helps to build our confidence and have a guide to talk. But I really want you guys to get that impressed upon you, that you have the skill and the ability to sit down and talk to someone about selling their home, right? And if we become good stewards of the market, we watch trends, right? Go look at the new home, go look at new homes, look at models, look what's going on in trends that are happening in that space, so that as you talk to people, you can advise them, right? Should I renovate? Should I not renovate? What does that look like? What are the, that there for a while, it was the taupe, right? The ugly taupe color. And then we went to this gray, and now gray's out, right? And so just paying attention to those trends, and then also paying attention to pricing. It was really interesting over the weekend to look at those 13 houses, and they ranged from $575 to $795, and they were all similar square footage, similar year built, all of that. And it was really interesting to see that wide range, because that's a big range. Think about that. I mean, it's over $200,000 swing in similar product for different prices. So I think we really have to pay attention to that. And I think two things, before I'm going to jump into the materials, is I think that we need to get really comfortable being brutally honest with sellers. Right? I mean, it's part of our fiduciary duties is to be honest, but sometimes it's hard. It's hard to sit across the table from someone and tell them your house smells, right? Or you're going to need to do work to it, or it's going to have to be priced this way in order for it to sell. So I think that even for me in providing classes, like, how do we have those difficult conversations, right? How do we have the courage, Steve, to tell someone that, hey, this isn't going to work? It's not 6 months ago, maybe, but not today. And I think paying attention to the pricing. So something that is priced today, comps are yesterday's news. And so I think we need to look forward to what might be happening in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Because if it does happen where the feds, there's talk, Nate was saying yesterday in the gas program that, feds, what if the rates go up to 10%? What if they do, right? And so 13% of the population, though, you guys, and this is something I learned at Workman, at the coach training, was that 13% of the population still moves every year. And so that's our beacon, right, Donna? That's our hope out there that says, it doesn't matter what's happening with interest rates, because 13% of the population still has a need to move every single year. And we figure it out, right? We figure it out. What does it look like? How do we navigate it? Okay. So let's jump in. So today, what our overview is basically to give you guys Let me move this out of the way. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but to teach you a conversational approach to helping sellers make informed and intelligent decisions. So we want to move away from using the word listing presentation, right? I'm going on an appointment. I'm going to have a conversation with the seller about selling their house, right? And so then the objective here, the purpose, if I could get my slide to advance, is to feel more confident, right? Working with sellers, serious sellers. And again, you know, how do we have those scripts and dialogues through this? This whole class has a lot of scripts and dialogues in it. And if there was anything you took from it is practice those scripts and dialogues. That is the best way to overcome objections. And when we're dealing with sellers that you know, when you sell a home or buy a home, it's very emotional. And so it's our job to maintain those emotions, right? And maintain the expectation. I would much rather over deliver than under promise, right? And if you price things aggressively, it will sell for more than asking, right? Because it will be perceived in the marketplace as a good deal. Now, I'm not saying that you make that your thing, because there are companies and realtors out there that are known for that. But I think we have to be, again, brutally honest. I have 2 listings coming up, but these guys are probably my #1 top 50. This will be like our 8th and 9th transaction that we've done together. And they're her dad's properties. He passed away, unfortunately, last year. And when we first were talking a year ago, market was different, right? And they were hoping to get 300,000 for them. Well, market has changed. And so she was kind of disappointed when I told her what I'm suggesting today for the price. And I said, well, here's the deal. I'm like, you can be disappointed with me now, or you could be mad at me later if I fail to sell your homes. So which would you rather have? Would you rather me get the job done now and unload this burden that's been weighing on you for the last year, or have them sit on the market chasing a price that we may not get? And so she was like, you're right. You know, so working through that, right? So we have to deal with the disappointment. So we have the expired listings, which, by the way, December 31st is the biggest day for expired listings. So if that's your thing, definitely pay attention to that. We're going to start seeing more expired and canceled listings. That's the reality of this, because there's going to be those agents out there that, you know, in my mind, there's going to be 2 camps of agents. You're going to have agents over here that go, I know what I know, and I'm going to keep doing what I do because it's what I know, even though it's not working anymore, right? They're going to be in that camp. Those are the agents that are probably going to be reintroduced to the marketplace, getting a job. Back over here, we have this camp of agents like a Steve, who's been in the business just a few years, hasn't ever really experienced higher interest rates or a more balanced market. Steve's going to say, you know what? I don't have the skill right now. I don't know what I don't know what I don't know. I know things are different. And if I don't seek education, ask questions, you know, go to a class, join a team, not that you're going to go back to Nate's team, but you get what I'm saying, right? Go to a brokerage that's going to give me the training and support. Those are the agents that are going to thrive. Right. And so I love the story about Brandon Howe. I don't know if you guys know Brandon, but Brandon was an agent on Nate's team, and then he left and went on his own. And this was during the crash, right? When the market popped, and Brandon decided to go all in on print marketing in West Wing. And I personally remember saying to Brandon, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you spending money on print mail? And Brandon saw the opportunity. Nobody else was doing it. Right. Everybody had stopped, even Nate, we had stopped producing our newsletter. We stopped sending out just listed, just sold. Like, we were full in working REO market, right? And didn't have to do that stuff. Well, Brandon saw an opportunity. Not only did he get a great deal on print marketing because no one was doing it, the printers were giving away the farm. So he got a great deal, and he went all in, and he actually now owns a real estate office in West Wing because he dominates that market, right? That's his market. And if Brandon had listened to the rest of us who were saying you're crazy, that would have not happened, right? So thinking about yourselves, like, right now is the time to lean in. Verl Workman says that wait and see is the enemy of success, right? So you want to go all in, right? See the opportunities and go for it, because the agents who do are going to be the ones that thrive. Okay. So our goal today, talking about expired, we do have an expired and for sale by owner class. We're talking about your network or your sphere of influence, top 50 people who know you, like you, trust you. And then, of course, if you're going to do any kind of farming, we do have a class on that as well. So we're talking about clients, right? New, repeat, referral. Obviously, today's focused on sellers. And then what do we need to have? So we need to have, yard signs, your ads, the internet, your just listed postcards. And of course, then having a really strong client care system that you can put people in. So the financial security of an effective converter. And so, if you talk to Nate and if you ask Nate if he prospects every day, he will tell you he doesn't, which I always want to kick him in the shin when I'm telling people that they should be prospecting, because it's counterproductive when I say to Donna, you should be prospecting for an hour. And Nate goes, I don't do that. But what Nate does do is he markets every day. So something goes out every day in his orbit that lets the people around him know that he's in real estate. Okay, so I'm not saying don't prospect, because that he has earned that right to not prospect at this point in his career and business. It's a machine, right? It's a well-oiled machine. But something goes out every single day that lets the world know that he's in business. Now it's his job to convert that lead. So if we look at this, if we have 45 weeks of the year, because we do want you to take some downtime, if you were to set one appointment a week, it could result in 8 additional transactions. And this is just focused in on those appointments. This doesn't take into consideration the 6 to 8 leads that you could generate from a listing, or the 1.5 buy sides that we should generate from a listing. So if we take that eight becomes a much bigger number, right? And I would like to think that all of us here are better than a 50% converter. I think the national average is about 65. There are some agents who want that number to go down, because that means you're going on more appointments. If you're at a 90% conversion rate, you're only selling to your friends and family, right? And so that's okay. We want to sell to those people, but we also want to increase that. We want to get more leads coming into our funnel, and then tracking that conversion rate. So now, caveat to that, if your conversion rate's really low and you're going on appointments, there's some balance there, shall I say. We want to make sure you're still a strong converter. An average GCI, I think that's each of you should know that number. But if you think if it's $10,000 is your average GCI on a check, that's $80,000 additional, just by having the scripts and dialogues and being able to convert. Real quick, I know Donna heard this yesterday, but Jennifer Daniels had shared with me that she set up her Google My Business account, and she's closed 2 deals so far this year from Google, just from people finding her on Google. And so the key that she said is you have to be really active on there, and putting something out on Google every single day. And then she's got like 25 5-star reviews, and so your clients can actually go and put video and put photos and things like that up there too. So it can be an interactive way to have reviews. Everywhere that I've read says that Google My Business is the place to get your referrals or your reviews. So you have to go through some hoops, right? You got to set it up. Google's got to send you a little form to fill out, blah, 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 to verify that you are who you are. But, it's 2 deals. And I think one of them was a $700,000 deal. So that's a pretty good day just from being active on Google. Okay. So side note, so listing plan conversation. So what do we need to have, right? So the no do have, we got to be able to convert, right? That comes back to our scripts and dialogues, not something that's sexy, right? No one wants to sit and practice scripts and dialogues. That's the only way to convert. I remember being in the car with Nate years ago, and we had this client, her name was Kelly, and Kelly was going sideways. And Nate said to her, Kelly, I can't answer your prayers if I don't know what we're praying for. Right. And I remember like kind of being a little cheeky, but it's true, right? We have to be able to know what to say in order to get people where they need to be. Right. So we're talking about sellers, relationship-based selling, right? That's really what this comes down to, is if they know you, like you, trust you, we should think that we'll be able to do business with them. So inside the materials, you're going to get a couple different dialogues: the confirmation, confirming the appointment, the messages throughout the 5 stages, which will be next week, and then our closing dialogue. Page 39 are some ancillary things for you as far as like supplements, thank you notes, things like that you have in your materials. So check your mind. So you guys have heard me say this before. My favorite thing about momentum is the affirmations. And so we have these 14 beliefs that we have to have, right? We have to believe these in our DNA if we want to be a strong converter. And so my personal favorite, that's one of my life core values, is that there is, I live in a world of abundance, number 2. For me, just saying that makes me feel good. If I start to stress about money or my pipeline or some bill that came up or the ridiculous quote I got for flagstone in my backyard yesterday, I live in a world of abundance, right? So I live in a world of abundance, literally a 500 square foot thing. I could not believe the price this guy quoted me. So anyway, so there is no growth without discomfort. Anyone who's new, or even right now in this market as it's shifting, we're all uncomfortable, right? We're all kind of going, what do we do next, right? Well, what's the next thing, okay? And then number 6, the cost is only the issue in the absence of value. I love pumpkin spice, especially this time of year. And a couple of years ago, I went to the store and it was like this big, you know, those little tiny ones, right? And they wanted like $8 for this thing. And I knew that like a couple weeks ago, that same one was like $4 cheaper. But because it was the holiday season, they jacked the price on the pumpkin spice, knowing that people would buy it. And I paused. In fact, I didn't even buy it. I looked at the ingredients and I was like, I have all of these in my pantry at home. I don't need to buy this little jar that conveniently has all of them mixed together. So I made my own pumpkin spice because I just thought it was ridiculous to spend that kind of money. So the reason I share that story is that cost commission is only an issue in the absence of value. So Steve, if you're sitting across the table from someone and you're not demonstrating enough value to warrant X apples, they get to that cost sheet, they're going to look at it and go, I don't know. But if you can over deliver and they get to that point in the presentation or through your paperwork, if you've done a good enough job allowing them to see why you're different and why you're in value to them, commission won't be an issue. Right. But we cause the issues for commission because we don't go do enough job going through exactly what we do. Frank Russo many years ago put together 110 things that the Russo team does when they list a home. If you want it, send me an email, I'll send it to you. It's brilliant because it's literally like make a key for the file, turn the paperwork in, put it in the MLS, right? Nate will tell you he's lost listings because some competition went in behind him and used some sexy phrase about they were going to put the house into this network of realtors, right? Which Nate was like, that's the MLS, duh, right? But because he didn't say it in the listing appointment, something so obvious that you and I take for granted, somebody behind him used it against him, right? So you can't overlook even the simplest thing of making a copy of the key. Right. So those are all things that we do that add value. So if you slid in front of someone 110 things, Donna, that you do when you put a house in the market, you think commission is going to be an issue? Probably not. Probably not. Right. And so agents that rise up right now, gone are the days that you can put a house in the market with no sign, no lockbox and whisper in a Starbucks and get 40 offers. Those days are gone. They're behind us. Right. And so now we have to drill deep and we got to figure out what do I need to do? Not having a lockbox, you guys, that's going to be, if you've got sellers that are in that position, it's going to be a challenge because there will be agents who will not show that listing simply because they can't get access. Okay. So going back to my affirmation. So I will not convert 100% of the leads I don't generate. You guys have heard me say this before. You should not get out of bed in the morning and wonder who needs your services. So filling your pipeline. We meet people that are C's. That's okay, right? Because the C person is what fills our pipeline so that 60 days, 90 days, 6 months from now, we have that lead. I used to love selling new homes because if I had a bunch of new homes in the pipeline, right? Yeah, they might take 6 months, but that was okay because I knew in 6 months I had a paycheck, right? So right now there's a lot of new construction out there, you guys. They're giving away the farm. So I would definitely, and right now they got to move product, right? In Q4, if that's the end of their fiscal cycle, they got to move product. And so they're being very aggressive, very generous, unlike 6 months ago. So go out and go do a live from a new home model, right? Go find out what they're doing. Lancy, last time I was there, Lancy and Desert Oasis and across the way in North Copper Canyon, they were doing up to 6%, whatever the buyer wanted off base price. So 6% of a $500,000 property, that's a lot you can do with interest rate buy down, right? Closing cost assistance, whatever. So go out and take advantage of that. This is the first time in 30 years that new home construction is almost equal to resale as far as values, okay, and pricing. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. So homes sell for two reasons, price and exposure. If you do a good job, if you become a master at tracking pricing, Nate Jr. is a great example. I call that kid all the time about pricing because he's just such a whiz at it. And why is he a whiz? Because that's what he did in the REO market. That was his whole job, was to run BPOs and prices. So he got really good at it at an early age, right? And then exposure. If you use the MLS and you have good photos, you have the right schools, you have good directions, you fill out all the details, right? All the details about the home. And you have a good write-up with good, so you have SEO, right? Search engine optimization. So in your write-up, you can put the bedrooms, you can put the schools, you can put the subdivision. I know that might sound redundant because it's already in the MLS, but that's searchable content, right? So don't use all caps because that's screaming. Write a storyboard, right? What would my life, Roberta, look like if I lived in this house? Right. So don't just highlight this feature, but like write a story. Okay. Make it a good write-up. If you do all of that, you've checked the box, price and exposure. Okay. You don't need Nate's budget to send out thousands of postcards. You can if you want to, right? And there's other benefits to that. But to be a strong listing agent, you need MLS and you need to be a wizard at pricing. All right. Those are the two things that you need. Okay. Let's see. Last thing is that pricing homes is not an exact science. We can look at data. can study that, but sometimes there are things that are outside of our realm that cause homes to sell. Like, I want to live next door to my mom, my brother, or my sister, right? Whose dogs are those? Is that you,
I'm not
Steve?
on mute.
You're okay. It's all right. I'm surprised Daisy May didn't start barking because she's over here laying next to me. So usually when she hears a dog, she starts barking. So 14 gives us kind of a little bit of some grace, I think, right? So, and not to take us off the hook, but does give us a little bit of grace. All right. So your only limit is time, right? At the end of the day, some of you have heard me tell the story, but when my father-in-law passed away, gosh, it's going on 5 years. He lived a really full life. I mean, he jumped out of planes, he blew up stuff, he worked on the Alaska pipeline. Like he was a realtor, he was all kinds of things in his life. And he at the end, he said, if I had just more time. And so when you think about that, right, here's somebody who lived an amazing, incredible life and did some just really cool things. And that was it, right? That's the thing he said, is he wished he had more time. So when we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. And so we want to be really protective of that. Protect your time, right? Because usually the thing we're saying no to is our family and friends, right? The people we care about and the people that we're doing all of this for. So you got to be really careful that your time is your only limited commodity, right? So the vital activities, we're not going to go through all of these today. I have a whole class that we just focus in on vital activities, but we got lead generation, lead conversion. Those are number 1 and 2 for a reason, because the most important thing that we do as real estate practitioners is generate leads. Right. And then the second most important thing is to convert them into people who actually want to do business with us. 75% of what you do in a transaction is admin prep. It's non-money making activities. So outsource that, right? We've got 2 fantastic TCs in the company, Janice and Stephanie. I joke that I don't know how to put a form in SkySlope, and I'm okay with that, because that's what I pay Janice to do for me. And she's happy to do it, right? So she takes care of all of that. She checks all those boxes that sometimes get missed and all of that, right? She makes sure that I look good and I get paid on time. So admin prep, right? To outsource that stuff. We have our marketing and exposure, right? That's the fun part, right? Putting stuff out there, using those tools that we have. And then presenting and negotiating. That's my favorite part, right? Is negotiating, putting the deal together. Then we have our closing prep, which title companies help a lot with that, and lenders. And then your post-closing activities. So following up, I like to follow up, 5 to 7 days after the transaction's over. Something inevitably happens, whether that's a buyer or a seller. So I want to make sure that I'm there to help with that. Also, something that I have done in the past is show up on moving day with food, because it's the one thing people forget to do when they move. And if you show up with subs or a fresh pizza and some cold drinks, you are a welcome sight, right? And so those are just something additional that you can do to show up, right? Be of value to them, have that wow factor. Going to closing, I will admit, in the past, I have not always gone to closing. And I've had several agents come through Momentum and say that that's part of their process, is they go to closing. And the reason being is that that's the last opportunity to really be present and represent the client. Now, if it's someone who's got, done this lots of times, or an investor, may not necessarily need to do that. But if you've ever had a time in your life where you needed a lawyer, there is something incredibly unique and comforting. Now, and Roberta's a lawyer, so she can probably relate to this, that you can tell that person anything. Right? Anything, and they have to go to their grave with it, right? So there is something really comforting about that. And so that's the same thing, when we're sitting, even if you're just sitting there looking pretty and the signer's going through everything. I have had deals where something's come up in the loan docs where there's been a mistake, right? And if you're there, it just helps to kind of calm things. Plus, you have the opportunity to do the social media thing, right? Take a picture with the goofy big key, or Steve's got the cool signs that said, we said yes to the address, right? So that's your last opportunity to, really engage that person. Roberta, go ahead.
Much like the concept that we invite 150 people to a client appreciation party, it's not about 150 people showing up. It's about the outreach. The 3 times that you call them, you invite them, you follow up, and then you follow up. Hey, we sorry we missed you. That whole concept. It's just, to me, it's the same concept with going to the closing table. Hey, I'll be there for the closing table for you. Even if I can't be there, I'll say, I make a big to-do about, well, that's part of my service. That's what I do. And many times my clients say, no, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So, it's more, to me, it's more about the, hey, I'm there for you. And I make sure that they know that they can call me while they're sitting there signing, because sometimes it is at 9 o'clock with a notary,
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was just going to say. Sometimes it's hard with the mobile notaries, that we may not have the opportunity to be there with them. So good points. Okay, so on page 11, and so listing department basics. So results by design. So the mission is that we want to ensure that sellers who work with you make an informed, intelligent listing decision. Right. So informed, right. We know what's going on. We know the trends. And then that it's smart, right. That they're making a good choice and they're not just being reactive. The vision is we want to attract people into your fold, right. Into your world that are intentional and want to take a proactive, which means to produce action approach to selling their home. And this is all comes down to that relationship-based selling, which then becomes what we call a collaborative team, right. It can't be a win for you, Donna, to take the listing and you get a bunch of leads and the house never sells. Right. And it can't be a win for them that they overprice the property and it never sells. So the win-win has to be for both. It has to work for both of us. I think, what was it? Tina Tamaru in her last, I missed her October session, but the one I did catch in September, I think she said in 2000 and what year was that? Oh, I'll have to go back and look, but it was like 131 days was the average days on market. And that was like 2012. So it wasn't that long ago. So, and we think about like, if a house doesn't sell in 30 minutes, we're all freaking out, right? We used to take listing agreements for luxury for 2 years. You would have a listing agreement for 2 years because that's sometimes how long it took. And if you look at the data tells you it's going to take you 30 days or 90 days or 6 months to sell a house. It doesn't do you any good to take a listing for 90 days because you can't get your job done in 90 days. Right. So you need to be thinking about that too. And there's some scripts and dialogues in here for that as well. On page 11, the key indicators of success, which is up on the screen. These are our bragging rights. These are the things that we should be talking about. Back in the day, Nate had a barf bag that we would deliver our pre-listing packages in. And on the outside of it had a picture of him. It said, the Nate Martinez team lists or sells a house every 23 hours. Now it's not in the materials, but it is something that I think you guys should really think about is having a pre-listing package dropped off. It is a game changer. So you could have a seller guide if you wanted. We used to have a copy of the seller disclosure, our VIP form, a marketing form, a pet alert, which unfortunately, the pet alert, which if you want the copy we have, send me an email and I'm happy to share it with you. We had a very sad situation where a dog got out, was blind, and it drowned in the pool. So the pet alert became a thing after that. And so, if you go to a house, right, and there's a sign there, if you came to my house with a pet alert with my 5 critters running around, I would think you were pretty freaking cool. Right. Or if you offered to come show the house because of my critters. Right. So we got to think about those things because animals are a really important part of people's lives. And the animals get just as stressed as the humans do. Right. And so inside the pre-package was the seller guide, the VIP, pet alert, seller disclosure, and a little cover letter. Now, if I walked into that appointment and I saw the spuds filled out and a set of keys sitting on the counter, I knew I had the listing. Right. And so think about that. Really strong listing agents will deliver a pre-listing package 24, 48 hours in advance. Okay. And I'm happy to talk more about that with you guys. Workman inside Slam. There's a bunch of stuff in there too for pre-listing packages. So bragging rights. So we have our percentage, how many houses sell? What's the list price to sales price ratio? Our average days on market, average days to close, our average customer service. Are we a 5-star agent? And then any testimonials. And again, go back to your Google My Business, put those people there. Also on page 11 is the approach. So we're going to talk more about this next week, but establishing the win-win, right? Talking about the appropriate price, our 7-step marketing strategy, which if you guys take that class, it is a TM, it's a trademark. So you can actually use that in your marketing. You could say, I use a 7-step proven strategy, holding the plan accountable, maximizing the net seller price to the seller, and then negotiating any repairs. I've got a deal closing hopefully today, and we negotiated $5,000 in concessions for repairs, plus a termite treatment, plus getting the house, getting it remediated for smoke smell. And so we'd already given them 2% in concessions, right? And so it's happening out there, right? And I think we need to be able to have those conversations with sellers if that's going to be something they might expect. And then of course the closing, right? Helping them get across the finish line. All right, come on, let's go. Having technical issues today. All right. So the presentation versus conversation. So the concept and idea. So we need to meet and have a conversation to see if a win-win relationship can be created. So so we want to stop saying, listing presentation, right? Instead, have a value add, highly effective conversation. So it's not about having to blindly asking sellers to list with you, right? It's about opening the door to potential working relationships and making sure those relationships are designed to succeed. So we want to get out of the scarcity mindset, right? Scarcity mindset says I must get the listing because there's a limited supply. Have we been in that space for the last 3 years? Right? If you've taken any classes with me, you've heard me say, stop saying there's no inventory, right? And now we don't have that problem. There's plenty of inventory, right? So get out of that space, right? That there's the limited thinking. Abundance mentality means that we choose healthy relationships. It also doesn't do us any good to go out and get a bunch of listings that are overpriced and maybe have condition or location issues, because that costs you money, right? And if those houses never sell, then you've just basically written a check, that you've spent money you didn't earn, right? And so we want to make sure that we have a balance there of listings that, are priced right, they smell good, they look good, right? This house in Surprise, when they were very disappointed with me at the beginning because I think they were thinking they were going to get closer to 500,000. When I went there, I'm like, it's built in 2007. It's in the older part. They're competing with a bunch of new construction in Desert Oasis. It smells like smoke. It has pigeons, and the outside of the house needs paint. So if you guys have ever seen, pigeons are hard to get rid of, right? Once they nest and they're there, like they live there forever. And then plus the smell of smoke, even though the carpet and paint had been replaced, which I learned a whole bunch of lessons around that too. So I had to tell them this. And, it was hard and they were not happy, but at the same time, they really appreciated me being honest. And so my plan was, let's price it here. There are no comps, right? There's no comps. There was none. Let's price it here. My goal is to bring you more than one offer. 4 offers, 48 hours, and it sold for 2%. The buyers were smart. They asked for 2%. They came in 2% above asking. And, we sailed through, got it. We're hopefully closing today or tomorrow. So I share that because that's a win-win, right? And being honest with them and having that conversation with them. So, because it doesn't do me any good, and it was funny because Tina and Tamaru had said that Surprise was in the cold zone, right? It's just because you have this map of all the areas of like where was still kind of hot selling, where was, right? And Surprise is in the cold zone. So, and I was thinking about this house, I'm like, oh, am I going to be holding this listing for a long time, right? Because even at the price I priced it at, I wasn't sure what was going to happen and what the feedback was, because I had all these things working against me, right? And so knock on something, we had a win. So we have to be able to have those tough conversations with people, okay? So the note on page 12 is getting the listing is only half the equation. It must sell for the relationship to be deemed a success. Your goal is not to get a bunch of inventory that doesn't sell. The goal is rather to advance the inventory that's healthy and profitable, okay? All right. So the confirmation dialogue, where am I at here? Hold on. I don't know why I have this in my, okay, here it is. I'm jumping ahead to page 16. So the confirmation. So many industries confirm the appointment, but we don't tend to do that as agents. Right. And I think it's important that we do. One, it's professional. And two, what if something happened? Life happens, right? And they might not realize if there's 2 people involved in making the decision, they might not realize that that's important, that they both people hear the message, right? And so if there's a husband and wife or partners or whoever's involved in selling, you need to be in front of all of them at the same time, unless it's humanly impossible, okay? Because they'll hear your message different. So confirm the appointment. So just to catch you at a good time, the reason for my call is to make sure that both of you will be there tomorrow at said time. Appreciate your time and look forward to meeting with you. If they're unable to, go ahead and reschedule it, right? And if this is someone who never met, maybe do that on a video, right? Send a video text. So now, Donna, they can see your face and they can see your body language and interact with you that way. So that's also an option for you to do, okay? So getting on the listing channel. So we want to, get our heads in the right spot, right? And so clear your head of any distractions. If you've had a disagreement with your spouse, or yesterday I was super annoyed with the flagstone quote, so I started my day out with a kind of a bitchy attitude. So clearing your head, right? Get all that outside distractions. Focus on what we want. Focus on the conversation at hand. When I was showing houses to this particular couple, we were meeting at a Starbucks, and I got there 30 minutes early, read through my notes, like just getting my head in the right spot, right? Looking at specific details that I know that they would ask me, and instead of me fumbling, like really looking at that. We used to have an agent in our office that before a listing appointment, he would go to if there was a coffee shop or someplace in the neighborhood, and he would just drive around the neighborhood, go to that coffee shop, look at his comps, and just really get his mind, like, what would it feel like to live in this neighborhood? I also suggest previewing if there's any listings around the property, to preview, right? So then you know what the competition is, because they might say, well, Jim and Sally down the street, right? Their house, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it's a 2-story and you're dealing with a single level. You would have never looked at Jim and Sally's house as a comp. That's going to be something that would throw you off in your appointment. Okay. So clear your head of all distractions, focus on the conversation. Imagine the desired result. The desired result is that we want them to list the house with you, and we want them to list it at a price it's going to sell at, right? If you have affirmations, which we could read the core values that we talked about earlier, if there's a song that gets you pumped up and ready to go, listen to that, right? Whatever those things are that get your game face on, that you're going to go in there and crush the appointment. So it doesn't do you any good to get the at bat if we can't hit it out of the park. Okay. So being professionally attractive, right? I love this. Let me get to that page here. This is page 18. So we want to get there early, or I'm sorry, on time. Park in the street, not the driveway. Okay. If you have signs in your car and your car's branded up, make sure you ask them, because sometimes they don't want the neighbors to know, or anybody, kids or whoever, to know. So ask that question if your car's got evidence that you're a realtor. Introduce yourself, right? Offer to remove your shoes, especially if you see a pile of shoes sitting at the front of the house or in the entryway. Offer to take your shoes off. Okay. Your competition is doing that. Also be really mindful, ring doorbells. So don't be doing something stupid when you walk up and hit the ring doorbell, or saying something that's inappropriate, because they can hear you. Okay. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to that. Move towards the kitchen or the dining room. Don't do your listing, run the comps and all that stuff sitting at a living room. It just is not conducive for having that professional conversation. Ask them where you want them to sit. When I was growing up, my mom had a particular chair in the house that was her spot. And she would lose her mind when she'd come home from work and one of my friends were sitting in her chair. And it wasn't until I became an adult and had someone living with me who liked to sit in my spot on the couch that I understood what my mother felt. So now I didn't lose my crap, but it still was annoying, right? So we want to ask where to be seated. Do not sit at the head of the table, because sitting at the head of the table presumes that you are the boss, right? And we don't want to do that. Then we want to tour the home. Okay. Make sure that you're paying attention to things that they're really geeking out about, because those are features that they think are important to sell the house. As you're going through, right, take notes. If you have your digital thing you're going to take notes on, or your paper, take notes, right? And as you're going through, use the Ford: family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Look for ways. If you see a picture of Hawaii on the wall, if you've been there, comment on it, right? Find that way to connect with them so that we can break down the walls, and find our way in, right, to warm up to them. So again, taking notes about the features, the amenities, also anything that might be condition. If there's peeling paint or missing flooring or something like that, those are things to talk about that could be issues for financing. Okay. And as you're going through, right, have the notes, right? Keep that, because it makes them, one, you're not going to remember. You need to take notes. Two, it also demonstrates that you care and you have listening skills. Okay. And then when you get back to the kitchen, ask where they want to be seated. Okay. Be on time. I can't stress that enough, to be on time. When we're not on time, it demonstrates a couple things. One is that your time is more important. You can't manage your time, right? And you're being disrespectful of their time. And if you're dealing with a high C-squared person, they're taking note. They got a list in their mind going of all the reasons they can't trust you. And the first one is not showing up on time. And if you're someone who chronically suffers with that, and I have friends that do, there are ways to trick yourself, right? Set your timers earlier, tell yourself you have to be there at 1 instead of 2. So just, and also not getting there early. I was raised that if you're not somewhere 10 minutes early or late, so I've spent a lot of time in my car waiting, because 10 minutes is a long time. I mean, you can feed a kid, you could take a shower, you could do lots of things in 10 minutes. And so be on time, right? And if you're going to be 30 seconds late, call them and let them know, okay? Because again, it's that professional courtesy and being professionally attractive. All right, so the listing conversation. So where am I moved everything around in my PowerPoint here to change this, so I'm lost. Hold on. Let's see. All right. So this is page 20. So becoming a listing strategist who helps sellers make informed and intelligent decisions. So once you're seated, right, we want to get into the conversation zone. So there are 3 messages that we want to deliver to help the seller take ownership during the effective listing conversation. So not all realtors behave alike. Okay, so you need to be seen differently. I actually had a client one time say, Remax pays your car payment, right? No, I wish. So, and a long time ago, there used to be this commercial on TV. It was for lending, but it was this couple and they get into bed. They're like, oh, it feels so good to have picked our loan officer. And then they go, oh, gee, what about the realtor? And they fly down the stairs and they flip on the porch light and they open the door. And there's all these realtors with a business card saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. Right. And I always hated that commercial also because it was so offensive to me. But it's a great demonstration of how the consumer thinks that we're all the same. And are we all the same, Steve? No. We are not, right? Do a few transactions and you'll realize that we are not all the same. So we have to demonstrate why we're different and how we're setting ourselves apart from the competition. Number 2 is that we must find and agree on the most appropriate price entry point. The entry point, right? This is where we're starting on the market. This may not be where we sell, but this is where we're starting. Back in the day, it took 65 days to get your first offer. And I say first offer because that might not be the offer that you take. All right. Number 3 is that we have our roles and specific expectations, which you guys will get in the second part of this class. Just like in the buyer conversion class, we have my roles and your roles. And so this is the rules of engagement, right? What they can expect from you and what you need to expect of them. Okay. And so telling a seller that you're different can add more you telling sellers you're different and add more value isn't enough. You must allow them to self-discover what working with you might be like. Okay. So when we send, so with comps, if it's someone I know, I'm going to email comps. If it's someone I don't know, I'm not sending comps. And especially if I know they're interviewing other agents, because I don't want Donna coming in and seeing my comp sitting on the counter and she uses it against me, right? It's not that she would do that, but you get what I'm saying. So I don't want to leave that behind because that's my stuff. And especially, like I said, especially if I know that they're interviewing. Now, depending, if you feel really confident, you might want to be the first agent that goes in. If you know that they're interviewing agents, and then offer to cancel those other appointments if they agree to list with you. I've been on the giving and receiving end of that phone call. Depending on who you are and your strategy and who they are, if you feel like they really are going to interview 3 people and they're not going to nudge from that, then go in last, right? Go in last so that you can be the one that closes and gets the appointment. Okay. Those are all things you got to ask on the upfront when you're taking the phone call to gather the information. Scripts and dialogues are a must. So most realtors mistakenly replace their personality with a script, which is a disaster. You must combine your own natural ability to charm and persuade with the dialogues that we have, so that the words and systems become yours. So we want to be, the reminder at the bottom here on page 20 is be likable, but not arrogant. Have we all met an arrogant realtor or loan officer? Yeah, right. Tend not to be great transactions. Stay curious and never imply that you know what is best for the seller. As a consultant, you are only the option giver, not the decision maker, right? And so we don't want to imply. One of my favorite scripts is just the word "oh," because I can solicit all kinds of emotions from that. We want to go deeper with things. If someone tells you, when, and one of my favorite questions to ask is, tell me about the last time you sold a home. If they're a first-time home seller, they might have their parents' experience of when they sold a home. And maybe that was a short sale, or maybe they went through a foreclosure, right? Or maybe they sold and it sold really fast, or maybe it took 6 months to sell, right? So we want to know what their previous experience was, because that sets the bar, right? That sets the bar. If it sold really fast, now I know I got to deal with that expectation, right? And someone who says I'm not in a hurry, as soon as the sign goes in the yard, they're in a hurry. Right? As soon as they got to start having the beds made and the dishes done by 8 o'clock in the morning, they're in a hurry. Okay. So those are the 3 things we want to engage, deliver the message, and then gain the agreement. Okay. All right, so that's all I have for today. Next week, we are going to dive into the actual 5 stages of the listing. And what does that look at with the scripts and dialogues and the plans around that. So do you guys find this helpful today?
Yes.
This is good.
Good. Awesome. Yeah. So next week, like I said, we're going to get into the 5 stages and then the scripts and dialogues around that. Yeah. So it's going to come back for part 2 next Tuesday, same time. This Thursday, we have business planning on Zoom. I know it's kind of boring, a little dry, but it was really helpful for me last week because I had a whole hour just to focus on working on my business plan in my journal. I didn't get as far as I thought I would, but it's just a really nice time to just have that hour to work on it without any distractions. Was anybody there last week for that? Chris, you were? How did you like? I mean, I know it wasn't any like bells and whistles and anything crazy, but it was just nice to have the time.
Yeah, I went through and I thought we were going to review everything at the end, so I went through and filled out as fast as I could.
Oh,
But everything is pretty much in line with where I started. It's minus what my future goals are going to be now that I'm kind of, 10 months into the business. So
has it already been that long? Wow. Doesn't feel like it's been that long.
no, it feels like a couple months, but
Yeah.
time flies.
Yeah. So tomorrow or Thursday, we'll talk about SWOT too. We'll talk about that concept, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is inside the Workman business plan. So, so join us there. Of course, pumpkin carving contest is coming up on not this Friday, but next Friday. So even if you're not competing, come by the office because it's a lot of fun. Maybe Mountie will sing again for us. Last year, he wrote a personal Remax rap that he performed, which was a ton of fun. So they're a hoot. So even if you're not participating, come by and have some fun. So
Okay.
and Chris, bring your daughter, right? So
Yeah,
it's
I was going to ask what kind of food should I bring?
whatever you want. So there's a potluck sign up thing. And yeah, bring the grands, bring the kids. It's always fun to see them all dressed up too. So
Yeah, if you go to the front desk at AHN, there's a list, and Tiffany's got that potluck list going.
Yep, it's a lot of fun and the competition's fierce. So, but all right, well, that's all I got for you guys today. If you need anything, reach out. I think Steve said he wanted the 110. So if anybody else wants that, send me a message and I'm happy to share it with you. Okay.
Thanks,
Yep.
Sarah.
You're welcome.
you.
You guys have a
Thanks,
good day. All
Have a
right.
good-
Bye.